Let's do that. And let's share. Okay. So what we're going to really talk about today is going to be a bit of a change, right, from what we've been doing the last few weeks. So, and before I even get into that, let me just let you bring you up to speed. I've had some challenges in the last week getting our most recent training loaded onto YouTube. YouTube is very insistent that my content, to build off our conversation just now, Sarah, is somehow bullying. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what about the content they're not liking, but we may have to end up, I've had this happen to me only one other time in my YouTube experience, and had to end up shifting to a Dropbox to place all the videos. So for anybody who was waiting for last week's content, I do apologize. I was going to give it one last effort. I have a block of time this afternoon to try and do some edits, figure out what their issue is. But if that doesn't work, we're going to switch over to Dropbox. So having said that, today we are going to shift gears a little bit. So if you've started with the KV Core work and you've worked through your profile, starting to figure out what you like about your website, and now you're working on your database, that's fantastic. You're going to get a couple of weeks off from new training on KV Core to get those things in line and to get that training working for you. What we're going to do this week and next week is really concentrate on kind of one of those painful things that not everybody focuses on in their business, and that's your business plan and your business budget. Our focus today, I just want to be able to introduce you to some resources that I think can be helpful, hopefully without being overwhelming, right? That any action that you take in this space is better than no action, okay? Knowledge is power. That's not an overrated catchphrase. It really, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties, but it really is meaningful that if you understand where you need to be, then you can be motivated and know how to get there. It's if you don't have a plan in place and understand the financial components of what's required to be successful and achieve your goals, then how are you going to know that your action plan, that the things that you're doing day to day are going to have an impact? Okay. So let's talk about, I said, this week, we're going to put a plan on paper. Hopefully you're going to walk away after either joining us today or watching this session, and you're going to have some tangible to-dos that you can take from here, things that you can walk away and say, I need to do A, B, and C, start getting my plan on paper. Next week, the second part of this, we're going to concentrate on, okay, now that you have a plan in place, what are some of the things that you should be doing over the course of the year to hold yourself accountable to that plan, to touch base with it, and modify it as you might need to. Plus, I'll give you some ideas of measurable ways that you can determine how successful you are against your plan. A business plan, having it is a huge first step, but if you do it now in October and November, and then you put it in a drawer and you don't revisit it again until this time next year, when it's time to think about 2024, then you've kind of missed the whole point. This should be a working document that guides you through your year. Okay, so why do you do it? Probably pretty obvious points here, but they are absolutely worth repeating. You need to define your goals. You need to, because everybody's goals, anybody who's on this call right now, you're going to have different goals. They may be production driven. They may be expanding into new markets. They may have to do with community involvement. They may have to do with maybe you want to bring on an assistant. Maybe you want to form a team. There's such a vast array of goals. And just because we're all in real estate, you shouldn't assume that everyone's going to have the same goals. So first thing is put them on paper. And then once they're on paper, you can start to prioritize what's more important, maybe what's less important. If I have to make decisions partway into the year, if I know I'm going into a challenging business time, right? A challenging environment, shifting market. If I have to make decisions about what goals have to maybe slide into 2024 and where I have to put like pedal to the metal next year, if you have them on paper, then you should be able to start to put them in those categories of full speed ahead and pull back a little bit. It's also having your priorities and your goals on paper is going to be helpful to you when you're presented with a new opportunity. For example, maybe you are really focused on community involvement and you have an opportunity to sponsor a local sports team, or you have an opportunity to join a committee in your town to participate and help build and execute on events for the town. If you're presented with those opportunities and you've got your personal and professional goals on paper, you can see how those goals line up. If this new idea involves a dollar investment, you can decide whether that investment is worthwhile or not based on whether or not it aligns with your goals. Okay. If your priority is to get out of production and maybe move into other avenues, then being presented with, say, a new marketing plan for whether it be like a postcard program or a new CRM. There are a lot of like mortgage companies in that CRM space trying to find you new leads. But if you're trying to pull away from production, is putting a $2,000 or $3,000 a month investment in a production-driven activity good alignment? No, it wouldn't be. So that's why it's important to have your plan. And then it's going to help you allocate your time. Again, not just your dollar resources, but your time resources to put towards the things that are going to be meaningful and are ultimately going to help you progress your goals. Okay. So let's start. Here's the first two things that you're going to want to be able to give thought to. I encourage you over the next week, if you can, to block out a time, a quiet time, whether it be a half hour, you can devote an hour. Find a quiet space or a space where you find peace, or where you tend to get good ideas. Maybe it's going for a drive. Maybe it's sitting in the park. Maybe you have a room in your house where, maybe it's the bathtub, right? It could be anywhere, but find that place where you can just think freely, let your brain just sort of go into that open and creative space, and ask yourself these questions because you want to put it on paper. Why am I in this business? Why have I chosen real estate? Why am I with EXP? I think that's an important part of understanding your vision or your mission, how where you are plays into your professional goals. And then the last one, why have you chosen to be an entrepreneur? What about this type of work, being essentially your own business owner, appeals to you, drives you, motivates you? Okay. So you want to start to think about those questions. And as you answer them on paper, you'll start to see a vision formulate about what's important to you and what you value in the big picture. So often day to day, we are very caught up in the details of a transaction, the details of a client, and we really focus very heavily on the client's life experience, whatever the client is going through with their financial matters and their real estate journey. But what's your journey? What's your big picture journey? The other thing that most of us probably don't do or don't do often enough is review our resume. Just because you are a small business owner, just because you're an entrepreneur, doesn't mean that you shouldn't at all times have your qualifications on paper. Be able to readily, and this is, I think, also a great tool that you can turn around and share with your clients as well, and make part of a listing presentation or a buyer presentation, being able to define what your background is, what qualifies you, where your strengths reside. This is not always the most comfortable space when we have to think about ourselves and describe ourselves, but it's an absolutely worthwhile exercise. Okay. The other thing too that I always like to point out when we're talking about resume, if you're on a team, don't forget to leverage your team's achievements. Okay. And when you talk about your professional expertise, talk about why you're with EXP. Talk about why you are with the team that you're with, because all of those things build into your value proposition and your resume, why you've chosen to align yourself with the people that you do to ultimately deliver the best in service to your clients. So these are the two big things that It's not rocket science, but I can probably do a poll of 1,000 people, and I might be lucky to get 10 people who have both of these things on paper readily available. Okay. So these are the first couple things you're going to work on. When you think about your plan going into 2023, you want to make sure that you're factoring in not just what your vision is for where you want your business to go, but I want you to think about how you're going to factor education and learning into your plan. And that can come in a lot of different ways. I'm not just talking about finding worthwhile training on EXP in EXP world, or in EXP University. Ton of content there, clearly, right? And you can sit all day, every day, just absorbing that content and still leave a lot uncovered. But you want to make sure that the places that you're going to for education, number one, don't overwhelm your schedule. And number two, bring meaning to your business. And you'll understand a little bit more about what I mean by that as we talk about how we're going to set some goals. But for example, if you decide that one of your big goals for 2023 is traction and revenue share, this is just one thought. Then again, if you're going to build 2 to 3 hours of education into your work week, would you spend those 2 to 3 hours in production related content, or would you spend those 2 to 3 hours hearing from people who are excelling in the revenue share, in the rev share space, in the agent attraction space? Okay. So understand what your goals are, helps figure where to go for your education resources. When it comes to learning, most of what we talk about today, I'm going to talk about in the framework of production, being an agent who helps buyers and sellers in their real estate journey. Okay. So there are a few places where you might hear me talk about things that deviate from that, but for the most part, I'm going to assume that you at some level are looking to help buyers and sellers with real estate. Okay. So in that vein, make sure that you are consuming content that helps you understand your target market and your ideal client. By ideal client, make sure you understand, I don't mean profiling a certain segment of the population, only working with people of a certain religious background, or eliminating certain clients because of their age. There are, based on your strong suits, based on your strengths, your background, your skill set, you can't not consider that you have an ideal client, right? Maybe you, for a few years in your history, sold new construction. So maybe you find that you're a master in that new construction space and you want to leverage that experience with new clients. So think about that in the way that you set goals. Maybe you find that you are loving social media and are enjoying, dipping your toe in the video space and starting to put content out there, whether it be on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok. And if you're going to go into those outlets, typically you might say, okay, I probably am going to have greater appeal to a younger audience or to a first-time home buyer audience. So it's understanding how your skill set aligns with who your ideal client is, who the type of client that you're probably most likely to attract based on your skill set. One of the things that I like, one of the resources I like to refer back to, Chris Walsh actually shared this, I think it was earlier this year, in one of the Leaders Edge Tuesday masterminds. There are some very good places that you can go outside of the EXP framework to get information. So if you're looking to gain as much real estate knowledge and have a handle on what's happening in the real estate market nationally and internationally, but then also what's happening in your local community, these are some great resources. New York Times and Star Ledger might tend to be more appropriate for the central Jersey markets. So if you're in Middlesex, Somerset, Monmouth, Ocean counties, certainly NJ.com covers the entire state, but some of these initial offerings too are really broad and will give you a good national perspective of what's happening in real estate. And again, help build your credibility with your clients. Okay. The other thing too, and I can if you want to take a screenshot, feel free. But these are some of the places that I know Chris likes to leverage for social media to again get content and tie into some feeds to get in the moment news and updates what's happening in the real estate space. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is where we're gonna spend a good chunk of our time today, knowing your financial position. We're going to switch over to a spreadsheet. This is your warning. The computer will not blow up, and we're going to work through it together. I'm going to give you, you'll see when we start to work through the spreadsheet, I've got a lot of numbers populated because I want you to see what it should look like in some sort of real world example. This is a product that I want to make sure I give credit to the New Jersey Broker's Office for, because it was in its original form came from them. And over the course of the last year and a half since I was first introduced to it, I've done a little bit of tweaking and adjusting. And this is something, if you want to make sure you drop your email in the chat, if you're not already on the distribution for our weekly content and follow-up, just go ahead and drop your email in the chat, and I'll make sure that you get a copy of this that you can download and leverage for yourself. Okay, so there are 3 segments to this financial worksheet in its current form. Again, original form was from New Jersey, and I've just done a little bit of tweaking things that make sense for the way I like to see numbers. I'm a numbers person by background, so spreadsheets are a joy for me. Okay, so first of all, most important, you want to start by understanding what your expenses are, what you need from a monthly standpoint, and then annually as well, to be able to pay your bills, keep your roof over your head, and not put yourself in financial jeopardy. So you're going to take the time to evaluate, and you'll see on the left-hand side here under step 1, again, I've gone ahead and just entered some values here so that we have some numbers to work with. But you really want to think about, what these numbers are on a consistent basis. Okay. If there are things that are not on here that you need to include, we've left room for that. Okay. In other. So again, just trying to give you an example, everything from mortgage to utilities, assuming that there might be childcare involved, healthcare, and also really important, make sure that you're factoring savings into your model. Okay. And you're going to get to a monthly total. So that's step 1. Again, right now on this particular sheet, what we're just trying to do is define our expenses. The next thing that you want to think about is what your annual business expenses are. This is something that you're going to kind of start, and then you might table it for a while when you start to put some of the goals on paper that we're going to get to next. And you might come back to it. So once you start to look at those goals and you say, okay, 2023, I want to pursue a geographic farm. So I'm going to set up a farm of, 300 homes, 250 homes, and I'm going to reach out to them, 20 times over the course of 2023. Let me factor that into my budget. Okay. So that once that goal is set, then you'll circle back here and you'll reflect that here. And that would be what I would describe as a print marketing charge. Okay. And you would ramp up your print marketing budget. When you think of these expenses in step 2, these are the expenses that you incur even if you close no transactions. Okay, so these are not transaction related expenses. These are just expenses associated with you being a licensed real estate agent and marketing yourself as a licensed real estate agent. Okay. So think of your board dues, think of your license renewal. I even factored in EXP's E&O insurance on the assumption that that has to get paid. The $85 tech and education fee is factored in there because these are things I expect to incur. And I know we could probably argue with the E&O insurance in our model that wouldn't be paid if you didn't close a deal. The E&O insurance in my past life was such an important line item that I'm just not willing to let it go to zero. It just doesn't feel right. So first step was what our monthly expenses are, personal expenses. And then in step 2, we're talking about what our annual business expenses are. Again, leaving room for other things that might not fit into any of these categories that are relevant to you. Okay. The third component that you just want to start to think about and put on paper, because I don't think enough people do this either, is understand what your out-of-pocket cost might be on a transactional level. Okay. And that's going to, of course, change whether you're dealing with a buyer or a seller, right? If you're dealing with a listing, obviously you're going to have more involved in marketing that listing, but then there could be costs with buyers associated with travel and time that you'll want to think about as well. So, but just start to put on paper what some of your per transaction expenses would be. Okay. This is going to help you again as you go back and look at your numbers. I have a category on here, client gift. Maybe that's not something that you do currently, and you know that it's a goal for next year that you want to start offering a client gift or an end of year gift for anybody that you work with over the course of 2023. There's a cost associated with that. And by putting it on paper, you're now drawing attention to it, right? And you're going to figure it into your financial position. So this is pretty straightforward, right? So far, anybody have any questions on the expense side of things? Hopefully, on some level, maybe you've given some thought to this, maybe not in the context of your real estate business, but we all know we have bills to pay and want to make sure that we're paying them. Now let's take this information and let's translate it into, all right, what do our production goals need to be? Okay, so let me just remind you, I had an $11,000 a month expense nut and a $13,000 annual business expense nut. So let's head over to our second worksheet, which is production goals. Okay, so let's think about knowing those expenses. What do we need to be able to cover all of those expenses for 2023? So anywhere that you see a yellow highlight, so here on the first page, and then as we go into production goals, anywhere that you see yellow, when you get a copy of this worksheet, that's your trigger that you have to enter a value into that field. If you don't see a yellow highlight, then it's going to be either a calculation or it's going to be pulling from somewhere else. So in the case of taking a look at, okay, what's our annual cost of living? We're pulling this information, our monthly expenses, and then our $13,000 annual expense. We're pulling those in from the other worksheet. Okay. And it's calculating, the spreadsheet is going to calculate for us that we need a little over $155,000 to cover all of our expenses for 2023. Now, that, yes, sounds like a large number, but keep in mind, I haven't factored in any other household income. Okay. So if you're in a position where you have more than one income in your home, then maybe you want to think differently about how you qualify your expenses here on this page. Maybe you want to make sure that you can cover half of all the home expenses, or 2/3 of all the home expenses or less. You can factor that in how you represent your expenses so that they pull in that way here. But let's assume that you're the sole income earner that needs to cover this nut. This is the number that you're looking at, the 155. I tend to round up. So step 5 is going to take you to, okay, what's your target take home number based on what you need to live? So I round up from the 155 to the 160, and I enter that here in this yellow field. Okay. Once you enter that, you want to think about your tax rate. This is something that you would know that you shouldn't share here. But again, it's a yellow field. So you should be entering whatever your tax rate is. If you're something less than 30%, make sure that you reflect that here. And what the spreadsheet will do is it will back into what your taxable take home needs to be in order to be able to set aside appropriate amounts of money to pay your income taxes. Okay. Again, I'm not a tax professional. This is a guide. Only you can ultimately know your financial position, and you should rely on a financial professional to provide you the absolute assurance that you need that you're in a good place and are appropriately contributing to your income tax obligation. Okay. But this is just designed to give you a guide. Okay. Then the last thing in this section, in step 7, is we want to think about 2 other components that factor into your commission and your take home. and that's going to be the company cap and your team split. Okay. Again, these are things that are only known to you. So you're going to have to go into these yellow fields and enter your own cap, whatever that might be, the 4, the 8, or the 16,000. And then also enter whatever your team split might be. That would go into this field. What the worksheet will then do is back into what that gross number needs to be, gross commission income. Okay. So in this model, based on the information we've entered, we're looking at about $256,000. Okay. Makes sense? Okay. So now let's take that and go to the next step. We've looked at our expenses. Now we've backed into what we need our income number to be. Now we're going to kind of take it one step further and actually try to make it so granular that we get to the transaction level. How many buyers we need to close, how many sellers we need to close. Okay. So that's where we start with steps 8 and 9 here. Okay. So our target take home pulls in automatically the 256. Let's talk about average commission rate. If you're in a position now where you're most frequently saying 2.5, then you can leave 2.5. If you're saying 3, then certainly go for 3. If you're saying 2, then 2. Okay. So you're going to want to make sure that you enter for your market, for your business, what your average commission rate is. This is going to give you your target sales volume. Again, a computed number. Okay. From there, we're going to figure out how many transactions we should be closing. So if we need to close $10 million in volume, let's say your average sale price, let's say maybe we bump this up a little bit and maybe now we're at 400,000. And I know in some markets, you might be closer to the 800 to $1 million mark. So again, another factor that will vary significantly for each person that's participating on this call. But you'll see how if I change that average sales price, if I were to say go up to the 750, okay, you'll see how the transaction count will change. Okay. But again, different price points can involve different marketing activities and strategies, and that can have an impact on your take home as well. Okay, so let's go back to the 350, and that puts us at a target transaction count, closed transactions of 29 for the course of 2023. Okay, so now we're going to get to that point of, all right, let's really think about how can I turn this into something I can measure month to month. Let's talk about sellers and buyers. So I'm going to take that target sales volume and I'm going to think about my business. Maybe I know that I tend to consistently spend more of my time with buyers than sellers. I just noticed a change there, so I'm going to fix it. So maybe I'm going to say in this case, 65% of my clients are buyers, 35% are sellers. If you're the opposite, then absolutely, that's why it's yellow. You're going to enter that percentage split here, with the idea being that the two together are going to equal 100%. Okay. So this will actually tell you that of those 29 deals that you should be targeting, closed deals for 2023, that you should see 10 of them with sellers and 19 of them with buyers. Okay. Does that make sense so far? Any question on how those numbers are calculated? Let me just check the chat. Oh, thank you, Philippa. Yes, please. Can everybody? I'm going to mute. Take a quick spin through. Yeah, I've got everything.
The noise are coming from Inez. Yeah.
There we go. Got it. Okay. Thank you. Hopefully that helps you, Philippa. Okay, so. But now we know that just because you're working with a seller or working with a buyer, that not every single one of those buyers and sellers is going to cross the finish line. So again, it's about knowing and having a litmus for your business as it is today and what you project. If you're working with sellers, let's say you're going to anticipate you'll be able to close 80% of your listings. And let's say with buyers, let's assume I had the same problem here. Let's assume that you know that you're going to close about 50% of your buyers. Maybe you're not as aggressive with your buyer number, just given the current state of the market, right? That you may find buyers who are discouraged, or it may take longer to get a buyer into a home. So maybe in this market, 50% is a reasonable number. Okay. So what that tells you is that in order to be able to get to your 10 closed transactions with sellers, if you tend to close and experience success with 80% of your clients, then you need to be actively working and getting 13 listings over the course of 2023. Okay. And then on the buyer side, if we're looking at 50% success, getting 50% of our buyers to closing, then you want to make sure that you are actively working with at least 38 buyers over the course of the year. So again, this is this is a tool. It is something to help give you a guide, and it's a way of taking your financial information and your actual business goals and somehow integrating them and bringing them together. Do not be intimidated by this, and do not let the anxiety around expenses, around budgeting, and around business planning force you to avoid this action, this activity. It's a tremendously valuable tool and exercise to give you clarity on where your focus should be. If I, like, again, going back to the point in the beginning, if I'm looking at this and I see that I need to get 38 buyers over the course of 2023, when I see a new opportunity, one of the first things I should be asking myself is, how does it help me get to the 38? How does it help me get to my 13 listings? Okay. If I come to the conclusion that it doesn't help me, then as much as that activity might seem attractive or appealing, it's not doing a service to you, and you should pass on it. Okay. So now let's take a look at actual production activities. Let's talk a little bit about this, because I hear this a lot in Leaders Edge on Tuesdays, and I hope if you are participating in that, you hear it as well. You do not need a lot of money to market in the real estate space, but there tends to be a trade-off that if you're putting more, sometimes, not always, but if you're putting more money into a marketing activity or a lead generation activity, then typically it might involve less of your time or elbow grease. If you're doing something that takes less money, then typically it will take more elbow grease. Okay, so here's just some ideas, but these are things that you should, again, be thinking about as you understand what your targets are, what your expenses are, your target income levels are, and your target transaction counts are. This is going to help you factor in what your activities should be in 2023. So many of the activities on this list are free or low cost. Okay. So let's just real quick take a look at the monthly newsletter. That's actually one of the classes that we will teach in KV Core. Probably, I think that's going to be maybe like late November or into December. If you can learn the newsletter platform in KV Core, you can essentially generate a newsletter for free. All you need is a good database and some creativity and some time to sit down and actually put it together. It's also a great way to connect with people in your community. So if you don't feel like maybe you have enough creative juices to build out the content yourself for your entire newsletter, the example that we'll actually go through in our training, one of the things I like to talk about is ways that you can leverage the community and highlight businesses and establishments and events in your community where you're trying to market yourself as a real estate agent, where you are building business relationship and rapport as well. So kind of a win-win for the businesses that you're highlighting, for you. And then hopefully now you've built in a referral source because you're giving another business owner, the local ice cream shop or the handyman or the new winery that just came into town, right? You're giving them free press. And so now hopefully they're going to turn around and return the favor when they have the opportunity to help and support you. Social media, there's a ton, obviously, of things that you can do for free. It's about the elbow grease, right? It's about getting past any like anxiety or inhibition that you have about getting into that space and doing it. You can also build on that, take the free and do low cost boosting, or like say Facebook ads, or you can do some level of sponsorship in Instagram. So again, you can dictate whether you want to stay in the free space or invest a little bit in these areas to give your name more traction in the social media space. Joining groups, that's a huge one. Or if you're not part of a networking group of some sort, a chamber of commerce, it could be any type of group. It could be your child's school PTA. It can be an athletic association. If you don't know what groups exist, start with the town where you're based and the county where you're based and Google it. You're going to find a ton of opportunity. Just starting to form relationships with other business professionals in different segments of the business of the working world are going to, again, give you opportunity for referral to build relationships. The more relationships you have in your professional arena, the greater opportunity you have to generate leads. Okay. So think if you even need to take it one step further, not just about how many buyers do I need to have and how many sellers, put it in the context of how many relationships I need to build over the course of 2023. Door knocking, past clients, and client referrals, those are all elbow grease items, right? Just making sure. I heard it again yesterday. I heard it a lot in Las Vegas. Don't be a secret agent. Let people know who you are and the service that you offer. Attend community events. Give yourself the visibility. You don't have to manage or create the event or lead the event, but you can have a presence at the event. If your town does a craft festival or a fall festival, or maybe they do a food truck event, take a look at what's happening in your community and see if there are ways to get involved, either to have a table or to maybe provide a service or be a part of the action. Again, building your relationships. Direct mail, of course, is something, and I think you'll continue to hear a lot about that on the Tuesday Mastermind too. Putting print materials in front of people through geographic farming is still important, and people who are successful in production are doubling down on their direct mail right now. They're not pulling out of it because of what's shifting in the market. They are doubling down. Okay. Open houses and broker open houses are great tools. Again, don't just look at it as attracting buyers and sellers, which is absolutely important, but you're also building relationships. So every time someone comes into an open house, whether it be an agent or a potential client, there's opportunity for a new relationship there that can go in a lot of different directions. Broker opens. If you have any thought of sticking your toe in that agent attraction water with RevShare, broker opens are going to be a huge segue for you to meet other agents and start the conversation about EXP. Form a niche, and that's going to take you finding that, I think, personal, quiet space to think about who you are and what your resume is and where you're spending your time. For example, maybe, think about the local carnival, right? That there's always sort of this like fun activity of going and getting your palm read and getting your fortune read, but it's something that you kind of look forward to and seek out. Become that person that, maybe if your kids have sports activities or school events, be that person who provides a service. Maybe it's a baseball tournament where you're going to be at the field all weekend. Set up a table and offer free consultations, free market valuations, free home valuations, or maybe just, get your real estate questions answered. Maybe there's a way that you can partner with another professional, not a real estate agent, but another professional like a handyman or like a home inspector or an appraiser, who, again, you might be able to tag team and work together to have a presence at these events. But as you consistently provide that service, people will start to recognize you and associate you with that service and look for you. That's what we talk about when we say form a niche. You always have the ability to go with paid leads but when we'll talk about more next week, is make sure if you are investing in paid leads that you are doing the due diligence to know if they are paying off. Don't just be throwing money at every new thing, because I guarantee you there's always going to be the next new thing. But if you spread yourself too thin financially and don't do any of these systems or programs well, you're wasting your time and money. Okay, so be thoughtful and mindful in the paid lead space. Care calls are huge, and I think they're going to play an even more significant role in the market that we're in. Just call and touch base with people. I've shared this many times with people on my team, because it's probably one of the most valuable pieces of advice that I've ever received. Make sure that you have at least 5 meaningful conversations every day. And it doesn't just have to be with clients. It can be with team members. It can be with family members. I think just hearing that and having that number in the back of my mind, it makes me more present in whatever conversation I'm having. So whether it's something at work, whether I need to ask and then listen about what happened in one of my kids' days, care calls are really significant. So factor that into your activity. And again, that's a no cost activity. Okay. And then the last thing I just want to mention about lead generation, because this is something that I heard a lot in Vegas as well. And it's worth repeating to anybody who's planning out 2023 and who's saying, I don't have the budget to hold an event. I can't invite and pay for, 500 families to come and pick a pumpkin at the local farm. Understand that the biggest part of the event is the invitation. Okay. So maybe the event is free or low cost, or maybe you're just saying, hey, I'd like to invite you to meet up at the pumpkin patch, and you're not offering anything beyond just the congregation of people, that maybe everybody's admission and pumpkin picking costs are still all their own. But the fact that you've gone and invited somebody to connect with you, there's value in that alone. So don't just think about the cost of holding an event. Think about the value of inviting someone to something. Okay. And that might change your focus a little bit. And you might be more open to building events into your 2023 plan in that framework. The other thing that this production model doesn't do, which is why I bring it up here on this page, because it's really important, is that you have a lot of opportunities in this model with EXP to generate revenue in other places. So and these are just some of the examples, but production does not have to be your only stream of income. Think about getting into the mentorship space. Revenue share is obviously a big component of this model. So if you want to start to understand it, one of the resources that I stuck here, it's actually a very good YouTube video that Rob Flick did. Rob Flick is a name that is, I don't have started. Rob Flick is a name that is very prominent. He's one of the highest earning revenue share participants in all of EXP. He's got like a 30-minute video on YouTube about his wealth chart. And I've heard so many people refer to Rob and his wealth chart model. So again, just another resource to put in front of you. If revenue share is something that you want to pursue, I encourage you to seek out that 30-minute video and watch it. If you want to build in referrals into your business, Workplace is a phenomenal platform to do that. There are a couple of agents on my team that work very heavily in the referral space. One person comes to mind with a military background who works with other agents in the military space throughout the country to either take on leads or refer leads out when military families are being relocated from one base to another around the United States. I have another professional who real estate is not his, at the moment, not his primary profession, if you will, although it probably should be for the amount of work that he does, but he's a couple of years away from retiring. This is his sort of secondary, but his primary profession feeds him a tremendous amount of referral business. So he has leveraged Workplace find agents in other parts of the country that are like him, that are similar in the way they work their business, in their personality and mindset. And he has made them referral partners so that he can collect income on that lead, that he's not just giving it up or having to pass because he doesn't have the resource locally to be able to work it. So these are other things that you should think about beyond production. They may not even be relevant to you this year, but maybe at some point they will be. So don't overlook them. Okay. So this is the financial model to get you started. Let me just take a quick look at the chat. Are there any? So that's a really good question, Inez. It does not factor in renters and landlords. So this particular spreadsheet, but that's something that we could very easily, if you do a lot in the landlord and the rental space, we could certainly modify this to be able to better meet your needs and your financial projection. So that's a great question. The other thing, let's see, Millie, were you asking to get to trying to get into the real estate?
Yeah, the care calls, if they're literally just strip care and it's just directly towards something that's more personal versus you're trying to get into the real estate or just kind of make your.
I think in my personal opinion, and you can probably talk to a lot of different people that have different perspective on this, but when I talk about care calls, I just think about genuinely just making a phone call or even sending a text message to say, you were on my mind today. I just wanted to reach out and see how you were doing, and let that evolve, that conversation flow wherever it flows. And that probably is a big just reflection back on sort of who I am and what's important to me. We talk a lot there. I know a lot of people that are on my team that feel very strongly about being authentic and being genuine. And so when you make a care call, that to me is where it has to be rooted in just showing care and concern. That's a little bit different. Like if you look at those production activities, you can certainly set up calls to past clients. But I think when you talk about building in calls to past clients or asking for referrals, then that conversation is different. And that action item on your to-do for the day or the week will be a little bit different. But I think that there does have to be just some level of general care without you saying, do you have any real estate needs? You may not see the benefit in terms of a lead in that exact moment, but understand that you're absolutely investing in the relationship. And in the long run, again, we're in a relationship business. So I hope that helps to answer your question. Okay, so this is the financial picture. Again, we can tweak it and adjust it a little bit to be more reflective of how you might look at production differently, whether to Inez's point, you want to factor in rentals. The other thing that this model doesn't do, which I haven't quite figured out how to seamlessly incorporate it, is remember when we looked at our expenses, we talked about what some of our per transaction expenses might be. It's important that you document this information, but understand that this model doesn't have an easy place to factor in that amount right now. So you want to make sure that whatever your production goals are, maybe you decide that you want to be able to fund $1,000 for every transaction towards these transaction specific events, then I would say you would want to go back. So think about the numbers where we were at. We were at a $29,000 target sales volume. What I would say is if you're looking at 30 transactions for the year, that's $30,000, right, in transaction related expenses. So what I would suggest you do to cover that is here, when you have to take a look at what your expenses are and then decide what your target income should be, that's where you factor that additional 30,000 in. So maybe this number becomes 190 or 185. Okay. if that makes sense. But again, the most important thing you can do for yourself is start this process. So let's circle back now. Based on that, let's go back to our slides, where we are with our financial position. Once you start to do that work, now let's talk about, okay, I have to start building a plan. What's my plan for 2023? There are so many models that you can choose from. I'm just going to only share 2 with you today because, again, I think the financial plan is a huge component, something you need to do. Your mission statement, right? Your vision for your business and your resume are super important. So you've already got 3 important to-dos. The last thing is identifying the model where you're going to put on paper your goals and break it down to a more granular level to get those goals accomplished. Okay. So 4 things. You want to make sure that when you choose a model for charting your goals, that it's easy, that you can measure it, and that you're not going to be afraid to go back and revisit it. You're going to need to be accountable to it, and you're going to have to modify it over the course of the year. We may continue to see things, sort of unprecedented things over the course of 2023 in the way that the market is changing, that you're going to need to modify your plan. And you need a model that's not so rigid, and you need a mindset that's not so rigid that you're not going to embrace those things. Okay. One of the things that I know I saw this a lot in school, and I mention it here too, is a SWOT analysis. It comes up a lot in different real estate seminars and different online resources as well. Performing a SWOT analysis by identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You literally, in this model, it can be as simple as just taking a piece of paper and folding it in 4. And you end up with 4 quadrants. Identify strengths, weaknesses, label them, the 4 sections, opportunities, and threats. And what you're talking about is really where you're going to zone in on what your strengths are, where you're going to zone in on your weaknesses, where you want to see yourself gain strength, and then identify opportunities in your market, threats in your market. So to give you a couple of examples, and you don't want to put your entire resume. You've already got a resume. What you're looking to do with a SWOT analysis is start to think about where you're going to target your attention over the course of 2023. Over this specific time period, so that you can give yourself viable and achievable goals. So maybe your strength in 2023, maybe one of your strengths is going to be that you are a positive-minded person. That's going to serve you really well in the market that we're in. Maybe one of the weaknesses is that you don't, maybe you're not visible enough as a real estate professional, and you need to bolster the ways that you are letting people know you're in the real estate space. Opportunities. Recognize that in the market shift that we are in, the opportunity is greater than it has been in the last couple of years for you to shine as a master in your marketplace, for you to be a source of solid information, of positive information, of calm, and of productivity. Okay. There are going to be plenty of people in our space, professionals, that either stick their head in the sand or they become the message of doom and gloom. So recognize that there's opportunity in that for you to come through. And in the example that I'm giving, if you're that positive-minded person, you're going to leverage that strength to be able to build and capitalize on the need that the market will have for people delivering positivity and positive messaging about real estate. What would a threat be? I don't like the word threat. It's just, obviously it's built into the title, but I think it's just more, I think challenge is probably a better word. And what I would describe as a challenge is maybe things that you don't have a lot of control over. For example, interest rates. Interest rates are going to have a tremendous impact on the narrative that you create for your buyers and sellers. It's going to change what your buyers can afford. And it's also going to impact what your sellers should be considering. They shouldn't be waiting for the lines of 50 people at an open house and think they're going to get $50,000 over asking price. So it's about understanding what the challenge is and then managing the expectations. Okay. But again, if you're going to do that, if you're going to take a piece of paper and put your 4 quadrants, you're not looking to list absolutely everything. What you're looking at is what are the things that you want to focus on over the course of 2023, where you can gain traction, improve your production. The other model, and this is actually a model that I really like, and I use it myself. It's called the 1-3-5 model, and I've also heard it referred to as GPS. I don't think the GPS stands for like the GPS in your car, but I'm going to be honest with you, I can't even remember what the GPS stands for. But the point is, I really like this model. The point is that you, again, want something easy, measurable, and gives you good focus. Okay. The way that the 1-3-5 method works is you're going to identify first your big goal. And then from your one big goal, you're going to identify 3 key focus areas. And then from those 3 key focus areas, each of those 3 should have 5 objectives over the course of, in this case, we're talking about an annual business plan. So over the course of 2023. So I'm going to show you 2 different examples. Let's say your big goal for 2023, and you shouldn't have just one. I encourage you to have at least 2, but not more than 3, unless you can make a really good case with me. I think if you had more than 3 big goals in this model, then you're going to be stretching yourself too thin. Especially because each of your big goals should be something kind of unique to itself that maybe, and you'll see in this example here, like I'm going to give you one example that's production rooted, and I'm going to give you another example that's maybe taking advantage of an opportunity to broaden an income stream and move in another direction. Okay. So let's say in this case, my big goal is to increase my GCI by 20%. So where do I want to focus in my business in order to get to that 20%? So my focus areas might be lead generation. Okay. I happen to have here CRM lead generation. So does that mean investing in KV Core? If you're not a KV Core user, whatever CRM you're using, but somehow leveraging the power of that platform and the automation there to generate leads for my business that where I can then turn and convert those leads and ultimately improve my gross commission income. Another focus area might be in personal development, that I recognize that there are things that I need to do in my own development as an agent that will benefit me and my ability to grow my commission income. And then maybe another area, my third focus area might be brand awareness. How do I get awareness out into the public about who I am and what I do? So in my example, in my 1-3-5, I'm going to kind of explode out on that last one, brand awareness. Maybe the way that, and again, when you get to this point, when you get to the third column and you break out with your 5 action items, they need to be measurable and as specific as possible. So take a look at what I've put here for brand awareness. Volunteer in my community. I didn't stop there. If I stopped there, it wouldn't have enough meaning, wouldn't have measurability. But I'm in my action item, I'm going to say devoting 10 hours a month to volunteer opportunities in my community. That's something that come November 1st, I can look back at the month of October and know if I hit that 10-hour mark. Maybe I want to create a postcard campaign. My action item is not just a postcard campaign to build my brand, but it's a 12-month campaign with a monthly expense associated with it. So again, measurable. I've committed to the time, I've committed to the dollar value, and I should be able to measure whether I'm achieving that action over the course of the 12 months. The question will then become, and what we'll talk about next week, is accountability to these things and how they do end up tying back to my ultimate goal of increasing my production. But right now, what I'm saying is make sure that you're creating an action item that is not so vague that you won't know if you achieved it month to month or not. Okay. Join a networking group in my area, in my geographic area. That's something that you should be able to check off pretty easily. Okay. Social media messaging, 5 hours a week. Maybe for a lot of you, that wouldn't be specific enough. Maybe it needs to be 5 posts a day. Maybe it needs to be 10 30-second videos a day or one 60-second video a day, whatever the case may be. But again, measurable, something very specific that you can look back and say, did I achieve that action item this, today, this week, this month? And then maybe brand awareness, just another example that I mentioned, maybe sponsoring a local sports team and having a budget for that. So that means having to go out, identify the team, set up the branding, fund the team's budget and get my name out there. Okay. So again, this is just one example of how the 1-3-5 works. Let's take another look and go in a different direction. Let's say that I didn't have a production goal, but instead wanted to branch into another area of income opportunity. So maybe in this case, my goal is to build a coaching platform into my business. Okay. So this might be a new opportunity, not something that's existing that I'm looking to improve on, but something brand new. So I know that the 3 areas that I would need to focus on are first defining what that coaching service or platform will look like, then coming up with action items to market the service. And then a third piece of it that's important is education. So then look at what I did here. If I expand on education, what are my action items, my 5 action items for that focus area? There's a coaching course in January. There are weekly calls, both with Success Coaching that are EXP sponsored platforms. There's another coach, John Kitchens. Join in his coaching call. He has 5 to 7 hours of coaching content every week. So joining one coaching call every week, again, measurable. Identifying books and reading, putting that in your action plan. Okay. Again, if my focus is education, how am I creating a variety of action items that collectively will contribute and bolster me in the area of education? Okay. And then finally, maybe I might want to consider a personal mentor or coach for me as I build my own coaching platform for others. So again, just another example of how 1-3-5 can work. The value of this model is that it's simple. Okay. It's simple and it should be it's something that you can turn around and implement and put to paper. So that kind of takes me to the end of where I want to stop with the first of our 2 sessions. So just to recap where we are, and then we can just open it up for questions or comments or ideas if there's anything that you do or have done that you want to share. I would love to hear that too. But remember, you need to identify what your vision is through a mission statement. If you're driven in production and want to, have your best year ever, if you're trying to break into a certain segment of the market, if community involvement is important to you, if work-life balance is important to you, whatever is important to you and your vision of entrepreneurship in this business, in real estate, define it. I know a lot of you are not just passionate about real estate, but you might be passionate about other things too. Maybe you are passionate about personal health. Maybe you are passionate about the health and well-being of your clients. Maybe you are passionate about providing support to a local community or charity. Build that into your mission. It should feel like a solid representation of you. Your resume, you need to get it done. And once you do it now, if you don't have a current one now, do it now. And then when we talk about this again in 12 months, all you're doing is updating it. Okay. But you need to have a resume at the ready. We talked about your budget. So now you're going to go and dive into that worksheet. And if you have any questions on that, I can help you with it. And then the last thing that you want to do is pick a model. If you just want to start to identify like SWOT, like those characteristics that you're going to kind of focus on in 2023, or maybe you like the 1-3-5. Or maybe there's another model that you like that you want to introduce to the group. But I think 1-3-5, if you're going to go with 1-3-5, at least 2 big goals, maybe 3. I don't think you should do more than 3. Again, you don't want to spread yourself too thin. And at the end of the day, it's just like a diet. Okay. If you don't set realistic goals, you will frustrate yourself very quickly and bail out on the process. So while your goals should stretch you, they should never be unattainable. So be realistic, be practical, and give yourself the opportunity to be successful. Okay, so those are all the things that I wanted to make sure I introduced to you today to get you started. I do want to mention that I think the New Jersey Broker's Office is also holding a business planning session tomorrow. So if you're looking for another perspective, that Thursday 9 a.m. call in either EXP World or Workplace could be a good resource. You may see a very similar version of the worksheet. I don't know if they're still using that, but you may find that useful to you to participate. And then let me just take a quick look at what was going on in the chat. Does anybody have any questions or comments, or when you have something here, Philippa? Let's take a look. Do you want to talk about this model, Philippa?
It was just some background on the GPS.
Oh, on
one.
GPS. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Have you heard of it before or used it before?
I have heard of it and I have loosely used it, but I would not say that I was consistent with it. So
I appreciate your honesty. Well, there it is, global positioning system. So maybe that is like the GPS in your car. But this is great. I'll bookmark this and can make sure to share it too with the group, with some of our shareables from today. Does anybody else have, let's see. Oh, okay. So Millie, you have, okay, so there's another way it's described. So G is for goal, P is priorities, and S is for strategies. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that there was any link back to KW. So how about we go around saying KW stole our idea? But it could very well be a model. I think the idea here is that it's just simple. And it's something that you should be able to easily incorporate into your mindset and go back and measure against. Okay. That's the most important thing. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions or comments, maybe things that you've done in the business planning space that you think are helpful?
Diana,
Yes.
I have a question. It's more like I need an advice.
Okay.
So a lot of people, when I talk to them, they always say, like, choose one coach or one top leader and follow that person and try not to get yourself confused, but I find it to be more challenging and more fun to follow more than one coach and follow more than one top producer, because I'm getting ideas from different channels and I'm seeing what's best fit for me and what I like most. And I'm kind of like making my own plans. What do you think?
So I'm going to honestly probably fall somewhere in the middle. I think what's most important before anything else is that you have a solid mission statement, that you understand what your goal is, okay, what you want to achieve. And whether it's personal or professional, whatever the case may be, make sure that that's defined. And then make sure that whatever you're doing is helping to further your mission. If you getting variety is helpful to you and you're finding that you're getting maybe, you learn a little production nugget here and you learn a little, I don't know, maybe you like to follow one person for their production advice, and maybe you like to follow another person because you feel like they're so relatable and, just are getting kind of a different level of, I think the most important thing is that you understand where your mission is, and then don't overwhelm yourself with the content consumption. Because if you spend so much time consuming the content, you're never building in time to take action. So
Right.
I think I personally value the variety. I like to hear from different voices. One of the things that I came back with from EXPCon, I love Leader's Edge. I love Fast Forward, our upline. And don't quote me because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think we are responsible. I think our organization, if you will, Fast Forward Down, accounts for like 10% of the entire agent population of EXP. And I think we account for like 20% of the total production just in our organization. So we've got obviously some really heavy hitters. So when you're tuning into Leaders Edge or you're tuning into Fast Forward, you're going to hear from some of the most successful producing agents in our entire organization, and they're giving you their playbook, right? So tremendous value there. But I am also learning there's a group on Workplace, for example, called Family Tree. Family Tree has become a collective of some other organizations where there are people who say, you know what, if I lead Fast Forward movement, I can also be supportive of, there's another organization called Freedom Builders, and there's another organization, I think there's another one called the Global Alliance. There are so many different ones, but Family Tree is a great place where you can get introduced to some different voices. That sometimes you're going to be looking for content that you won't get in Fast Forward. And again, it depends on who you are, what your mission statement is, that defines what content you're looking for. Don't overwhelm yourself. I would say set a limit, set a time limit. And the reason that you do that is to avoid spending so much time in consumption that you don't spend time in action. And then decide, it forces you to evaluate and prioritize who you think the most valuable resources are to help you in your business. Does that make sense?
I totally agree. Yes, I totally agree with you, because I went to a lot of Zoom training for a lot of the top producers or leaders, and I picked my favorites. And those are the ones that if I can't go to the live training, I always go on YouTube, and while I'm driving my car, I'm playing that, while I'm going to a listing appointment, I'm playing Tina Call, and Joe Oz, he just pumped me with energy, it's like I picked my favorites.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's really a great move for you, to recognize that you can get value from a lot of different voices. So, and I think recognize that you want to find resources that speak to you and motivate you and empower you to do great things in your business. You want to make sure that you are not participating in this content and walking away feeling like you're underachieving. Okay. Because some of these forums you get on there and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing that. I need to, all these things I'm not doing. You have to look at this in the vein of where can I go and get the resources that I need, the direction that I need to move me forward. As long as you have that mindset, and I think identify the best resources and put a time limit on it. It's kind of like scrolling in bed at night. You start through the reels and it's only going to be a 10-minute thing. And then before you know it, you've just donated 60 minutes of your life to the reels on Instagram. So set a limit. But that would be my recommendation. But I value the variety of the voices and people that you're tying into. Any other questions or comments, thoughts?
I have a quick question. How do you connect with Fast Forward, or is it a website, or what is it?
So Fast Forward is run by Dan Beer and Kyle Whistle. They are like I said, at the head of our organization, and they actually manage out of Facebook. So I can send you the information. I can go in there when we're done, Anixa, and for anybody else who wants to, just stick a little message in the chat so I know to check. I can make sure that you get an invite through Facebook and then join Fast Forward. Fast Forward has daily content. There's one day that's production driven. There's one day that's more coaching. There's one day that just talks all about EXP. Like if you're talking with an agent and you're like, I could tell you some, but let me refer you to somebody else who can tell you even more. There's a resource for that with Fast Forward if you wanted to go that route. So I can send you the link and then give you the details on what the schedule is so you can see Monday to Friday what their content is. But again, that's not the only thing out there. If you're not sure what else is out there, I would encourage your next step to be to go to Workplace and find Family Tree. Could be another way. And when you look at Family Tree, you're going to start to see some of the same names over and over again. These are agents at the highest level of production and revenue share that have made the greatest contribution to EXP's growth. So they're good voices to hear from. They're not just, paid teachers to come in and talk about a textbook. They're giving you their real life solution to problems that they're either seeing in production or in agent attraction, whatever the case may be. Okay, great. So I see.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Millie, that's great with Grant Cardone. So very high energy. So I'm very curious to see your feedback there. So, and who's analysis paralysis? That's
Yeah, that's me.
well, you know what? Then between Grant's energy level and what we're talking about today, it's not just about having your goal. You have to tie action to your goal that you can measure. So I would say that's probably, if you are that type of person that's going to sit and analyze the numbers for too long, then you have to be mindful of the component of action in building a business plan. Awesome. Anything else that anybody wants to mention or share or talk about today? And Elizabeth, I just have Elizabeth's iPhone and I want to make sure that I can find you on Facebook to add you. What's your last?
Sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. It's Diaz.
Diaz, D-I-A-Z or S?
With an S.
S. Okay, perfect. Okay, great. So I'll make sure to, if you want to be part of Fast Forward, if you're not already in that group, make sure to get you connected. Again, that's Facebook, traditional Facebook, not Workplace. So look for that invite to come through in your actual Facebook account. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Hi,
Nice.
Rochelle.
How are you? Sorry, I had to
Good.
hop on late, but I'm glad I was able to make it.
Good.
I just saw where you had mentioned your 12-month campaign. Is that something that you set up like at the end of the year for the whole following year for your farms? Your farm area?
So we can probably spend a whole hour, just a whole afternoon, probably just talking about geographic farms. And that's one of the things I was able to listen to a woman by the name of Mary Maloney.
Okay.
Mary is in our upline. I don't know if you've heard that name before, but
Yeah.
she gave a great presentation while we were out in Las Vegas about the value of geographic farming and how important it is. She is one of those people that where a lot of real estate agents are looking at their budget saying, I have to cut this, I have to cut this, I have to cut this. She's saying, I'm doubling, I'm doubling, I'm doubling. Because she sees the opportunity, right, of being the voice, being the positivity, setting the tone. When everybody else sort of disappears, she's going to be the last one standing in her space. When you look at geographic farming, there will be different mindsets around this. So I can tell you what my perspective is, but just like I was saying with Sarah, I encourage you to hear different voices. Because there are some agents who have a very specific format for their postcard that they believe generates, and it does, they have the proven results to generate a lot of leads from their postcard program. But you just want to make sure whether you are building out 3 months at a time, 6 months at a time, or 12 months at a time, you just want a big picture. When you're in business planning mode, you want to think about what consistent message you can maintain throughout that entire campaign. Farming is not something that's going to get you results in 3 to 6 months. Farming is something that you need to be prepared to do at least once a month for 12 to 18 months, if not longer. And when you talk to the people who say double your efforts, they're trying to get in front of people every 2 to 3 weeks. So you're talking about 20 to 24 postcards over the course of a year. For me personally, when I talk about a campaign, I prefer, number one, make sure that your design is consistent so that you're recognizable, that if you're using your photo, make sure that you're using the same consistent photo. And a great person to see this modeled is a woman by the name of Gogo Bethke. Another very successful name in the EXP realm. If there's anything that you can take from GoGo, is that anywhere that you find GoGo, if you find her on Instagram, if you find her on her website, on any other social media platform, she's using the same color scheme, she's using the same photo, and she's building brand awareness because people begin to recognize her. So when you're thinking about a long-term postcard program, make sure you're thinking about how your brand is going to be consistently displayed. Work with your partners. I know in the case of like with our team, and we work with Closepoint, and Closepoint has a postcard program where you can then help alleviate some of the cost through co-branding with title company and also pull in a mortgage lender. And
yes, I agree. Angela's amazing. She
Yes.
designed my postcards. She actually was able to figure out how to change her system and do the Arabic font.
Oh,
And then-
fantastic.
And
Fantastic.
that was crazy. And then she switched back to English. It was beautiful.
Oh,
And we're
that's
sticking
great.
we're sticking with blue and white because those are my favorite colors. And the cards, they're nice and thick. They look expensive. I love it.
Very high quality card. I agree.
Yes.
It's not a home printer card. It's a professionally done card. But the thing that I like about working with, and it doesn't have to be Closepoint, doesn't have to be Angela, but the thing that I like about that is you can take a look at a campaign now and say, okay, I like this campaign. Maybe I want to add to it, or maybe I want to remove these couple of pieces. One of my favorite campaigns, honestly, with that Angela does for Closepoint is the recipe cards.
Oh, I got that.
I think the recipe cards are fantastic because I really believe that a homeowner, probably the female in the house, not necessarily, but is more likely to keep your card than to keep a just sold or just listed or look at what's happening in the market.
I agree.
I want to stay in somebody's, cabinet for months and years.
Yes. Me and Angela came up with a hummus recipe.
That's a good idea.
And she's really good. And she has two different like streams of recipes. She'll either do food recipe or she'll do beverage, like alcoholic beverage, and kind of coordinates it with the seasons and the time of year. So 4th of July, your July card is going to have more of an Independence Day feel, where this time of year, the recipes are more sort of warm and, autumnal. So, but I think broadly, to answer your question, Rochelle, my recommendation would be when you're in business planning mode, like in the context of what we're talking about today, think big picture, think about how you want to reinforce your brand. That's a huge component of farming, is making sure that people begin to recognize you and you stay top of mind. And then think about what you would want your messaging to be from month to month, whether you want it to be something light, like a recipe, or you want it to be something more content driven. And then, of course, like I said, you're going to find those people in this space who think that those production cards or those sort of like call to action, like almost like sort of like panic kind of cards, are very successful too. The other thing, just to remind you that now through KV Core that you have a QR code. So you can factor your QR code into your postcard design to try and get action. The idea is that you're building your brand awareness, you become top of mind, on some level, you try to invoke action on behalf of the card recipient. And the QR code could be a great way to do that.
It's funny that you mentioned, because I was going to ask you what type of cards, and I feel like from what I've seen with the way you promote your website on KV Core, and like a little bit more on the warm fuzzy side, and I feel like that's sort of my connection as well, or my way. But it's true about like when you listen to different people, you pick up different nuggets from what their thoughts are. And I distinctly remember a couple of weeks ago we were on the call on Leader's Edge. And I don't remember which one of the guys it was, but they're like, don't send out recipe cards. And
that was Sal. Sal doesn't like that. Yeah. Sal doesn't like it.
I've always thought, oh, they're kind of cool. But then throughout the years, I've stopped because I'm like, well, maybe just send the market stats. But you're right. I guess it depends on who the recipient is, because
yes,
I mean, I do like stats. I have an economics degree, so I'm into the stats. But on the flip side, I would want to know what the hummus recipe, like, I think I would hold it. I may still chuck both of them, but I think I would probably hold on to the hummus one just because, I don't know, it's interesting to me. I don't know. I guess the thing is there's no right or wrong. That's just it. I guess you have to do what works for you and what you feel comfortable with. But everybody has their own, that's where that whole analysis paralysis comes in with me. Because I'm like, do I send a recipe or do
It's about knowing your brand.
Agree.
Yeah.
I think
I
you
agree
want
with
to
Deanna.
choose a platform that reinforces your brand. So,
Right.
okay, I can totally see that recipe cards don't make sense to Sal.
Right.
Okay, but maybe standing in front of a fancy car might make sense to Sal, and I think the world of Sal. But
Right.
I totally understand why he wouldn't see the benefit of a recipe card.
No, but he might see the recipe of like an alcohol.
Yeah.
That might be different, cocktail in front of that luxury car.
We should all send him a card and see which one he keeps. The recipe, the Land Rover, or I don't
yeah,
know.
right, exactly.
But
One
Deanna,
of the things that we're hoping to do is get Mary Maloney at some point to share and do on Leader's Edge her postcard program. I'm not sure if we'll be able to make that happen or not. It's a goal. But I just went back to my notes because one of the things that she mentioned is that you have to understand in the world, there are 4 different types of mindsets when they're looking at your card. There are analytical people, there are drivers, there are expressive people, and there are amiable people. Okay. And sometimes typically people will gravitate more to one of those than another. So analytical people want the numbers, they want the stats. Drivers, they like bullet points. Expressive people, they're like your Pinterest lovers. So they like pictures, they like the color, they like the illustration. And then your amiable people that go for the warm and fuzzy. So to Mary's point, if you heard her presentation, she would tell you build a card that hits all those pieces. So if a couple in a household, you have one person who looks for the stats and one person who's a Pinterest lover, you want a card that's going to appeal to both of them in different ways, but appeals to both of them.
Do you have
So
samples of any of those cards? Because some samples would be great. Or
I
does Angela have samples of those cards?
I have a ton of screenshots on my phone that I'd be happy to share.
Yeah,
I mean,
do
I
too.
literally, my battery just completely died that day. I'm usually pretty good with the phone, but my gosh, I got such a workout that day with all the screenshots we were taking. So yes, I can definitely share. And I really think that she would be tremendously she gave such a great presentation, and I just loved her perspective. And I think I can say it here in this group. I enjoyed the female voice too. So
Yes.
Would Angela be open to like brainstorming some of that, you think? And because I would
Yes.
also want to include Curbio and Express Offers in mine, but I would be
Yes.
willing to commit to a 18-month email postcard campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Maybe.
important thing is with not so much with Curbio, but with Express Offers. If you are Express Offers certified, you just have to provide those marketing components to her so that she can
Yeah.
incorporate them into your card. But absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Diana?
so then for your benefit too, Rochelle, because if you I can send you the link so that you can see some of the content that that Angela does with Close Point, just to start to get an idea of what okay, if I were going to do a campaign, what are some things to get my juices flowing? What do I like? What do I not like? Because I think that's a huge part of it is the more designs that you see, the more you'll formulate what you want based on what you like and don't like.
Right. And I'm trying
So
to get things up and running more on the campaign so that it's on autopilot, because I'm definitely one of those people. I love Canva. I love, I go down that rabbit hole and I'm like, okay, well, I was just talking to a friend and she was like, oh, I'm going to send Halloween out. I'm like, really? And then of course I hear like little Sal on my shoulder, don't send out something Halloween, or don't send, and then I go on Canva and then I start, like, I just get lost. It's almost, again, I think it's cute to send something nice and whatever, but so I just think if I can figure out that campaign ahead of time, at least once a month, and then if I want to do something else, so that it's like another one in that monthly period of time, I could always do that, because I feel like I get into that Canva mode and then nothing gets done. So.
Rochelle,
to the
do you
point
have a
we keep- oh, go
preferred
ahead.
lender? Oh, I'm
What?
sorry, Diana.
No, go
Do you
ahead,
have
go
a
ahead.
do you have a preferred lender? Because my lender helps me. He pays 25%
Right.
of those postcards cost.
Yeah, no, I do. Again, my whole thing is that I've always gotten hung up on the content, and for the past ones that I've been doing with the farm, I would just do them in Canva. I would pull the stats from the MLS, and then I would just send out like the monthly, this is what's sold, this is whatever. But I don't know. I have to figure out my plan. So.
There, I think you'll see, like, if you take a look at what Angela and Close Point did,
Yeah.
you're going to see, I think, a good mix there. But I
Okay.
believe very strongly, I still go back to the idea of have your mission statement on paper
Mhm.
and know who you're trying to attract, like who your ideal client is and your market. And then, so if recipes feels good to you, or if if you like the alcohol, the adult cards every month, then maybe you factor in 1 or 2 events even in your postcard program that either I don't know, I'm just totally thinking off the cuff, but I'm just saying you're building your brand awareness. So if you like the idea of recipes, then maybe you host some sort of like baking event, or
I've always wanted to
or
do a
pie
chili cook-off.
exchange or cookie exchange. Think of a
Right.
cookie exchange, right, with people in your community. It doesn't cost anything. I'm not sure, coming off of COVID, that that's like the best idea, but I'm just saying there's no wrong answer. It's about what makes sense to you and what reinforces your mission. But again, you're building on that theme. And if you like the adult beverages, then maybe one of your postcards is, as you get closer to the holidays, maybe you coordinate with a local what's like what's the like a canals, or I can't even think of the like
Like a brewery or one of the
Thank you.
wineries or
Yes.
like a local
Yes.
distillery.
yes, or even
Yeah.
like a
A liquor
you can even
store.
do like a canals or something that will say let's talk about a couple of different wines as you're getting ready for, or maybe some different ideas if you want to change up your beverage options, how to stock your holiday bar, kind of thing. I mean, there are things
You
that
bring
you
my
can
postcard
do.
in, I'll give you 5% off.
I've done that. I've done that
Yes.
I've done that with the burger place. I've never done that with like an alcoholic place, but that is a kind of a cool idea too, though. Maybe like
It's
a wine
just-
tasting or whatever.
It's again, you are starting to expand on a theme
Mhm.
and build your brand and have people recognize you in
Great,
different
I'm an
ways.
alcoholic.
Right, exactly. Partier. No. No.
That's hilarious.
I think
Our town-
statistics show that there's a lot more people in that space after COVID, not alcoholic, but certainly alcohol consumption that,
Yeah.
but in any
Diana,
case, yes.
I have a question.
Mhm.
It's a different topic, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So when you were saying to write down our goals, one of them was to identify our client's avatar. I love working in adult community. I love working with old people. Now, if I put that on my website, the KV Core website, or in my bio, is that going to only limit me to that kind of client? Or because I'm open to work with other people as well, but those are my preferred group. So do you advise me to add that in my bio or limit it?
I would not add that in your bio for a couple of reasons. Number one, because you don't want to turn off a potential client to think that you wouldn't be open to working with them. And number two, because you don't want to give the appearance of profiling or segmenting the marketplace based on age. But having said that, if you understand that you enjoy people in that space, there are some things that you can do. You can obviously select a geographic farm around a 55 and over community. Maybe that's local to you, and become an expert in that community. You can reach out to that community, to the property manager, who oftentimes sits in the clubhouse and puts in hours every week and say, hey, I have an interest in being able to help sponsor 1 or 2 events with your community over the
Oh my
course of the year.
goodness.
Is there an opportunity for me there?
I love that.
So you could be careful because you have to watch with solicitation. But if you're going in not to the residents and to the property manager to talk about opportunities to help sponsor an event or something, again, there could be great opportunity there.
Yeah, and
Um,
also a lot of those adult communities, because I've done a lot in there, like especially the Crestwood Villages, when they have like food trucks and bingo night and things like that, it's open to the public. So it gives you an opportunity to network, and always stay in front of that property manager, because they do a lottery where they get units to sell, because most of them have that. Before you can sell a unit, you have to offer it back to the community, or then, through a realtor. So if they get ones that get offered back to the community for the community to sell, they'll do a lottery with like a bunch of realtors cards and do like a pick out of the hat kind of thing. So it's always good to stay in front of them.
that's
But
awesome.
go to their open events, like the food trucks and things like that, because you really do network a lot.
Thank you.
That's awesome. That's great. So there are definitely actions that you can take that, leverage your enjoyment for helping those clients. You can also find, local estate planners who, it's typically people who are working with estate planning are, more mature in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Unfortunately, there are not a whole lot of young people in the 20s and 30s space that are thinking about long-term planning. But you work with an attorney or something to build a business partnership where you can be referring clients to that professional and vice versa. So think of different professionals in that space, being able to have sort of a Rolodex of good resources. Handy, like a handyman or a handy person is huge in a community like that if you're trying to market to it. So even being able to pull in another business partner that together collectively, you gain even more recognition amongst the community, the residents could be great. So, but I would not specifically put that in your bio, because I think it will have the opposite effect and will limit you as opposed to attract people to you.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Anybody else? Okay. All right, great. Well, I think there's some homework here. So, and I'm working on mine too. So I'm feeling the pain too, but remember how important it is and how worthwhile it is to go through this exercise. Next week, we're going to talk about how to now, you're going to hopefully have a good start with those things by next Wednesday. And how are you going to build an accountability? You're going to put time on your calendar, and we're going to talk about how you actually measure whether you're getting a return on these actions and these activities and these investments in your business over the course of the year. Okay. As a reminder, I said at the top, for anybody that missed it, I'm having a little trouble with YouTube. They keep telling me that my content is bullish and that they keep removing it. So I'm working that out. I'm determined. It's on my list today, and I won't go home until it gets resolved. So either the content from last week and this week will be available, or we're going to be setting up a Dropbox where we can post all of the content there, and I'll make sure everyone has the link for the Dropbox. Okay. And thank you. Yes. I think I have everybody that's here on the distribution. So you will get copies of our materials today. I'll send those out shortly so you can get started. Okay. Thank you all
Thank you
so
so
much. I
much,
appreciate
Diana.
your
This was
time today.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Have a
everybody.
terrific
good
week,
week.
everybody. All right. Bye-bye.